What started as bizarre rants and social media antics has spiraled into something no one could have predicted: an actual arrest. Yes, this isn't clickbait. Liver King, once hailed as the face of primal living and ancestral diets, has officially been arrested, and the charges are as wild as his raw meat dinners. The man who once grunted about organ meats and ice baths has now landed in legal trouble after making violent threats toward none other than podcasting giant Joe Rogan. But how did it get to this? From Liver King flying under the radar of controversy to suddenly flying to Texas with what authorities claim were intentions to harm, this entire saga reads like a fever dream, not a fitness influencer scandal. Liver King didn't just blow up overnight. He exploded onto the internet with a niche so extreme it was impossible to ignore, eating raw animal organs, lifting massive weights in the middle of nowhere, and preaching about 9 ancestral tenets that seemed more made up than meaningful. His persona was built for virality. With millions of followers watching every grotesque bite and wild stunt, Liver King became a fitness myth, a walking meme with abs of steel and the diet of a cave bear. His message was simple: live like ancestors, eat like a predator, and the rest will follow. But underneath the brawn and bravado, there was always one glaring question that wouldn't go away. Was he legit? That skepticism only grew as Liver King's fame ballooned. He wasn't just a guy eating liver for fun. He marketed a whole lifestyle, pushing overpriced supplements while claiming his outlandish physique was 100% natural. Anyone who questioned that narrative was quickly shut down. But fitness communities weren't buying it, and the biggest voice of that skepticism came from Joe Rogan himself. Joe didn't mince words. He called Liver King a scammer, plain and simple. According to Rogan, the physique was too outrageous, the claims too convenient, and the snake oil supplements far too suspicious. Despite all the criticism, Liver King never got that coveted invite to appear on the Joe Rogan Experience. And that clearly stung. Over the months, his content shifted from motivational primal rants to full-blown obsession. He wasn't just promoting health anymore. He was focused, laser-focused on Joe Rogan, not in a collaborative way either. It turned dark, personal, and aggressive. Liver King began uploading videos where he talked directly to Joe, sometimes ranting in a barely coherent mess of thoughts, other times issuing actual fight challenges. In some videos, he offered to donate $1 million to charity just for a podcast invite. In others, he practically begged, mixing it in with threats that no longer felt performative. At one point, he even said, "Murder, bro," while referring to his obsession with fighting Rogan. And then came the most disturbing development. He flew to Houston, Texas, Rogan's hometown, allegedly to find him. Whether it was a genuine attempt to confront the podcaster or just a chaotic publicity stunt, authorities didn't take it lightly. Especially not when it was wrapped in erratic videos full of bizarre declarations like "the password this week is Joe Rogan," and "I hope you choke me out." That kind of rhetoric isn't just unhinged, it's legally dangerous. He even started naming his dogs in videos directed at Rogan, introducing them like they were part of some primal war party. There was a video where he talked about dying for his family, tying it into his fantasy of being choked out by Joe. In another clip, he claimed there was no winning or losing, just an outcome, which only added to the confusion around his mental state. His tone switched from aggressive threats to emotional vulnerability within seconds, like a man spiraling without a script. He spoke of jet skis and past friendships with Joe's acquaintances, as if rewriting history in real time. One of the most alarming moments was when he shouted, "You're dead!" in a video, immediately followed by eerie calm, suggesting a dangerously unstable mindset. All of this painted the picture of someone who wasn't just seeking attention anymore. He seemed to believe he was on a mission. His followers started to notice the shift. What was once a ripped, self-assured influencer had now become a disheveled, erratic man, ranting about enemas and laying down in his shower. He recorded videos weighing himself after strange rituals, mentioned CT scans from past Thanksgivings, and went on unprompted tangents about coffee recipes from health gurus like Ben Greenfield. It no longer felt like performance art, it felt like watching someone unravel in real time. People close to the situation began getting genuinely concerned, wondering if this was more than just internet trolling. And then it happened. Liver King was formally arrested at a hotel in Texas. Law enforcement, possibly tipped off by concerned fans or even Rogan's camp directly, showed up and escorted him out. The charges? Making terroristic threats? Yes, that's the official legal language. This wasn't just a little scuffle or a warning. These are serious charges that could come with major consequences, especially in a state like Texas that doesn't take threats lightly. What made it even more surreal was how Liver King reacted during the arrest. On camera, he tried to keep filming, asking if he could bring his phone, talking about how fast he could run now that he weighed 178 pounds, and throwing around casual martial arts references like 126 ways to choke someone out. None of it added up. None of it sounded like someone grounded in reality. His own wife and family were seen nearby, clearly shaken, but still with him, witnessing his bizarre collapse into legal chaos. All this because Joe Rogan didn't want him on a podcast. It sounds ridiculous, but the obsession had clearly gotten personal. Liver King wasn't just chasing fame anymore, he was chasing validation and maybe even vengeance. Over the last year, he went from demanding attention to threatening violence. He stopped talking about health and started talking about legacy, pain, and sacrifice in a way that seemed disconnected from any form of rational self-awareness. There was talk about death, about fighting for his family, about being choked out in some kind of glorious defeat. He called Joe his high priest at one point and mentioned wanting their families to meet, like some kind of primal showdown was inevitable. It's no wonder Rogan kept his distance. Even before the arrest, Joe openly talked about Liver King's antics on his podcast. He shared how Liver King tried to cozy up at multiple UFC events, sat front row at his Vegas shows, and even used intermediaries to try and land a podcast spot. Joe's reaction? A mix of bewilderment and blunt rejection. He called out the lies. He said Liver King was just running a con game and had finally been busted when private emails leaked. Those emails, published by Derek from More Plates, More Dates, exposed that Liver King had been on an elaborate stack of steroids and growth hormones for years, completely contradicting his public claims of being natural. That revelation was the beginning of the end. Once exposed, Liver King lost credibility fast. Major podcasts stopped booking him. His supplement empire took a hit. The guy who once represented an extreme but marketable brand of masculinity was now considered a fraud, and not just by critics, but by fans who had once believed in his message. But instead of quietly exiting the scene or owning up, Liver King seemed to double down. And that doubling down eventually turned into aggression, then obsession, and finally, arrest. The wildest part of all this, even at the point of arrest, he was still trying to record videos, still talking about fighting Joe, still clinging to the narrative that this was some kind of righteous battle. There was no pause, no recognition of how far it had gone, just more primal chest beating, more chaos, and more confusion. And all of it now sits on a collision course with the legal system. There are reports suggesting he might be released soon, maybe after seeing a judge with possible bail terms. But the fallout has already happened. His reputation is toast. Even for someone who built a brand on controversy, this is a hard line that most won't cross back over. His fan base, what's left of it, is split between those who still think this is performance art and those genuinely worried for his mental health. And somewhere in Texas, Joe Rogan is probably shaking his head wondering how dodging one podcast guest turned into something this dark. The Liver King saga was always bound to explode. The question was when. Now that the spectacle has crossed into real-life consequences, there's no turning back. And whether this is the final chapter or just another twisted installment in the Liver King mythos, one thing's clear: he's no longer just the guy who eats raw liver on Instagram. He's now a cautionary tale about obsession, fame, and the peril of losing yourself in your own hype. What happens next depends on how the legal system handles someone who blurred the line between influencer drama and real-world threats. But no matter what the courts decide, the internet has already made up its mind. The king has fallen, and this time, not even an ancestral tenant can save him. If you're still watching and want to stay updated with more insane stories like this one, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below. What do you think will happen next in this wild saga?